Welcome to Pioneers in Payments, where payments experts share their insights. Now, here's our host, Donna Blum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pioneers in Payments. I'm your host, Donna Blum, and today I am joined by Carlos Navarro from Corvia. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you, Donna. Pleasure to meet you.
So glad that you could join us today. Really looking forward to just gleaning some insights about what's going on in the payments industry from you. But before we get started, would you mind telling us a little bit about who you are, your background in payments, and the work that you do at Corvia?
Sure. So I have been in payments for about 20 years now. I started off with at Elavon, which is part of US Bank, and had a nice stint there, really working on multiple different things. And that was really my first exposure into the payment space. Prior to that, I had been in what we now refer to as fintech or technology and consulting, all around technology, and worked at Elavon primarily in business development, and then became their chief marketing officer. So really got exposed to the international side of things then, as Elavon at that time was US and EU. And that led to really helping Elavon build out their international presence in Latin America. And so built out Brazil, Mexico, and that was really, really interesting to learn different payment types and different ways of doing things and just how different countries operate. And then that led to a long stint at JPMorgan Chase, focused in on also international, not only Latin America, but Asia Pacific. So trying to help build out a solution in multiple countries throughout two different parts of the world was pretty incredible. And so did that, and then wanted to get back more into the U.S. and more focused in on the SMB and mid-tier space. So was given the opportunity to become the chief revenue officer for Priority Payments, which is one of the largest non-bank owned processor acquirers out there. And then a few years ago, about 3 years ago, was given the opportunity to become CEO of Corvia, which is a full service providing company. And we primarily focus only on U.S. SMB customers.
Wonderful. Well, welcome back to the U.S.
Yes, very much enjoyed not having 14-hour flights.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Although it's nice to go to those places if you're on vacation.
Well, you know what's interesting? It is very nice to travel for vacation, but it's also been probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, because you get to meet people in our payment space from around the world, and you learn new ways of doing things. But it also focuses this back to the reality of this is going to be a business that is fundamentally about relationships. And there's going to continue to be changes in technology and payment types and solutions you need from a technology standpoint. But at the end of the day, because everybody can't build everything, you have to build a core group of relationships to be able to deliver products to the customers. At the end of the day, that's what is required. And so you get to meet people that have built some amazing solutions, and how do you use them here? How do you use them in another country? So it was incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Lots of smart people in this industry.
Oh, yes.
It's a very
Very much so.
dynamic industry. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, so this next question, obviously, we were talking a little bit about the fact that you have an industrial engineering degree. You
Mhm.
kind of came up through tech and obviously sales and marketing. From your perspective, let's take more of a operations and a product perspective. How does that impact your leadership at Corvia?
Well, so I'm an industrial engineer from Georgia Tech. And then to add confusion to my world, I have my master's from the University of Georgia. So there does have some internal conflict there. But the reality is that in payments, as in most financial organizations, it is about a process. And so having the solutions that can drive the most efficiency and the most scale through that process is critical. And it has to be rinse and repeat. So you can't be right 95% of the time. You've got to be right 100% of the time. Now, mistakes do occur. So now you have to have the processes and systems in there to spot problems. And when problems do occur, have the technology and the people and the processes to fix it as rapidly as possible. So having the right products and solutions for us, particularly around uh, onboarding, credit, KYC, risk is probably the biggest piece of it, to be honest with you, to be able to ensure that our customers are doing the right things, protecting ourselves, protecting our bank, right, and the bin, and protecting all of our partners is critical. So we spend an inordinate amount of time implementing risk-based solutions across the board to do that. And the good part is that those pieces of technology continue to evolve and change and get better. From what I had as an option 3 years ago to today is very different.
Yeah. And we need it, right? We need it to keep getting better because the fraudsters keep getting better.
Yeah, that's true. Without a doubt, you have to do that to protect the house, so to speak, right?
Right.
But the reality is that you know just the technology of payments changes so much, right?
Yes.
So, if you go back to a long time ago from the knuckle buster days, right, that many people don't remember, to, just credit cards and checks and today and now you're starting to talk about, true alternative methods of payment methods and bank to bank payments and person to person payments. And now the next wave is around agentic AI, agent purchasing. Well, all of those things are just the next evolution of the transaction, which means that the tools that we utilize to monitor and protect those transactions and all the institutions involved have to evolve, right? So a great fraud solution from 5 years ago would not be applicable today. And all of those companies out there that are generating really, really good products are evolving to work with different, AI layers and to be able to be ready for when that really gets to a common place with everybody.
So let's talk now for a moment about obviously there's a lot happening in the industry, but what, from your perspective, is the most notable trend? Is it AI or is it something else?
I think it depends on where you are, the type of company you are, right? So if you are a SMB, and there's nothing wrong with this, which is the majority of business in the United States, right? A small restaurant, a small family-owned retail environment, right? Um, you know, you face different issues than a Fortune 100 retail company or a large e-commerce based company. So let me go back to my original comment. At the end of the day, it's about relationships and you have to have good technology. But what a small SMB player needs, if they're not doing a lot of web solutions or web commerce, is very different than than Best Buy, or very different than a very large e-commerce company. But obviously, seeing a lot of trends around, first and foremost, the AI space is coming, and most companies aren't ready for it, right? In terms of on the transaction flow. Now, using AI to improve your people and your internal processes and your risk and your credit and your underwriting, that's an internal focused piece that is critically important for everybody. But ensuring that first and foremost you have a lot of different payment modality, right? Depending on your size, that you are using, some sort of orchestration layer that gives you options on different processors. That with some of the changes in regulation from Visa and MasterCard and American Express, et cetera, that you have the right fraud and chargeback capabilities, which is obviously right now a very hot topic in the e-commerce space with the different changes that Visa and MasterCard have implemented from a fraud and chargeback perspective. So that's going to be across the board. And that, I think, is one of the most critical pieces. I think the bigger companies are starting to prepare more for these agent buying type scenarios, but the small, the SMB space is about payments. It's about surcharging. It's about dual pricing. It's about starting to accept account to accounts or bank to bank payments, which in the United States we're behind on compared to the rest of the world. And so as the younger generation comes forward, that's going to become more and more prevalent. And every company is going to have a solution to enable that.
Hmm. Yeah, so true. Okay, so Obviously, there's a lot of companies in different parts of the industry. We both work for companies that are sort of more in that tech, solution space. What would you say is the largest opportunity for organizations that process payments today?
Well, we've talked about this, and at the end of the day, this is a scale game, right? You grow by uh, growing your portfolio, but you also grow by implementing different technologies that enable commerce for that. So it depends on who you're talking about. If you're talking about about processors or acquirers, then it's clearly providing, seamless boarding for merchants to come on board, enabling all the payment modalities that are there, giving them all the data that they require to run their business. But now what we're really seeing is a lot of integration of merchant acquiring with solutions that are really treasury based. So, banking, ledgering, lending, all of those things are now coming together because the companies are figuring out, even at the SMB space, that they don't need five solutions. If they can get that from one partner, that's critical. And we're offering that. So we're offering not only merchant acquiring, but some of our larger clients are now beginning to roll out products that some of our other partners own, and we're bringing to market that are treasury and banking related. So that is critical across the board. And but I think from the processor standpoint, the other part is going to be the reality of over investing in the risk and compliance worlds.
Okay, so that's the biggest opportunity. On the flip
Well, that's the
side,
biggest need, right? It's the biggest need. The biggest opportunity is continue to make it as frictionless as possible. If you can do that, then you can bring all these products to market for your customers. And again, very different SMB versus middle commercial versus enterprise. They all need different things. So having those available to you is critical. And what is offered to SMB is sometimes not needed at the enterprise and vice versa level. And so having those capabilities is critical.
okay, so now let's talk about the greatest challenge. What is the greatest challenge for organizations that process payments?
What I'm seeing and talking to peers of mine, I think, first of all, greatest opportunity has the same greatest challenge. It's the two sides of the same coin. And that is right now is the AI piece is a big opportunity and a big challenge, to be honest with you. And how can we enable our employees to utilize these tools to provide better service to our customers? So that is a huge challenge we are all facing. Um, the other challenge, which is internal focus, is as new people come into the payments space, new employees, is they're not following those traditional paths of going to work at one of the larger acquirers or a large technology company, getting trained in how you do these things, and now they've got to come into our world from scratch. So um, you know having the right training for our employees is critical, and then building an ecosystem around them, which is this is not new. This has been going on since business began. Of building an ecosystem around them to support them from an HR standpoint, from a culture standpoint, from a training standpoint. That remains the same no matter what. But I think right now what we are seeing a lot of is primarily a challenge around risk and compliance. It's just the hot topic, and it's only going to get hotter, not only because of just traditional risk and compliance requirements that are changing, but as the landscape changes to include agentic AI type of purchasing, that will be an entirely different world that the customers and processors and acquirers are going to face.
Right. Yeah. Like, just how do you know that it is actually a verified purchase made by an agent for a real person?
Yes. So the levels of trust and verification are going to change, right?
Right.
From the old days of let me see your driver's license to, you know, what electronic trust elements can be brought in when I'm making a purchase individually on a website, which, what can be tracked today from IP address to phone to everything else is critical. And now that will evolve to understand, is this a trusted agent or not?
Right.
Right. And how can we identify that agentic agent, verify it, and verify that the communication between the selling and the buying agents are done correctly to ensure that that transaction flow occurs, but more importantly, that then the downside of that, a return, a chargeback, fraud, how are we mitigating all of that? And that is incredibly complex.
Right.
And they're going to be, there's a lot of major players really working on that are going to offer up those services to companies to consume. And that's the only way that's going to work.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so let's just kind of now try to summarize all that you know about what's happening in the industry, and you're going to leave our audience with one silver bullet piece of advice. What is that?
I wish there was one silver bullet because I would market it. I'd keep it and market it for myself. But there really is. Look, at the end of the day, first and foremost, get and keep and invest in good people. Plain and simple. You don't have to build everything. You can, consume solutions from other people in this space, which is very much about cooperation. It's the reality of our world. But you cannot invest enough in the technology around that merchant experience, right? From onboarding to KYC to risk and compliance. And that part of it is never going to go away. And the companies that invest in that to make it seamless and to make it easy so that it's not an onerous burden on the merchant or the partner, those are the ones who are going to win. And so always be looking at that, looking at your processes, looking at the technologies you bring into play, bringing in new tech, bringing in new processes, not being afraid to divest of old processes or capabilities that are no longer needed. And bring all that together. And that's just a continuous, never-ending cycle. And you see that from small companies like ourselves to the biggest of the biggest, whether it's JPMorgan or Fiserv or Global. They're continuing to innovate on product and product offerings, but also on what they do internally to make that better. So, in this space, I would be focusing in as much as you can on those things.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I mean, in such a dynamic industry, you have to continue to adapt and evolve. And if you don't, you're going to get left behind and you will no longer be relevant, right? So
you absolutely do. And at the end of the day, look, as consumers, which we all are, we vote with how we want to do things, right? And the different generations will vote on doing things differently. So you have to be on top of all that to understand what solutions you need, because as the current generation of boomers ages out of doing a lot of the purchasing to the younger generation, they do things differently, right? So how do you make sure that you are bringing the right products to bear seamlessly for them? And the companies that do that well will be the winners in this. They will, because at the end of the day, we're all going to have similar type of capabilities and offerings around payments and payment types. So how do you make that easy to consume? How do you price it fairly? How do you bring that product to bear seamlessly and quickly? That's who will win in this environment.
yeah, that makes so much sense. So if we're kind of going to wrap things up here,
Sure.
Carlos, I want to make sure that our audience knows how they can maybe reach out to you if they had some questions, wanted to have a conversation, or if they wanted to just learn more about Corvia. What would you like to share?
Sure. Just look, go to our website, corviapay.com. You can email me directly at carlos.navarro@corviapay.com, and I will get back to you, or one of the folks on my marketing team will get back to you, and we'll walk through whatever your issue is that you're looking forward to discussing. And if we can solve it, we will. And if we can't, then we'll play a bit of trusted advisor and figure out where we can lead you to, because that's the key to this business.
I love that. That's so great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, I just want to thank you so much for watching today. Carlos, I want to thank you for your time and your words of wisdom, and just wish everybody a good day. Bye now.